What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to the Versus series. This is a series where I take two elements from a particular game that are similar, and I put them up against each other to see which one is better. In today's episode, we're going into the SMG category, and we're going to be covering the Grease Gun versus the Sterling. Now these two guns are extremely similar in a lot of ways, as you'll see when we go through the stats here. And it's actually very clear that when they introduced the Sterling into the game, they initially based it off of the stats of the Grease Gun, and then just made a few different changes so that it felt like a different gun. Kicking it off with the damage profile, they both have identical damage profiles of 35, 30, 29, 23, meaning they're going to be 3, 4, or 5 shot kills in core game modes. As for rate of fire, once again, this is identical between the two, which is usually not what we would see even if they're basing one gun off of another gun. Normally they change up the rate of fire a little bit. Not in this case. Their rate of fire is literally identical at 545 rounds per minute. This means, since they're the same number of shots to kill and the same rate of fire, they're going to have the exact same statistical minimum time to kill at 220 milliseconds within their 3-shot kill range, 330 milliseconds in their 4-shot kill range, and 440 milliseconds in the 5-shot kill range. Now, one of the things that separates these two guns is going to be their ranges. As you can see here, the Sterling has a slightly better range profile. You get a little bit of a longer 3-shot kill range and a little bit of a longer 4-shot kill range. Also, when we have a look at our one-shot kill potential in hardcore, you'll see that the Sterling has a very slightly better one-shot kill range. Moving on to handling and mobility, the Grease Gun has an aim down sight as well as a sprint out time of 190 milliseconds, whereas the Sterling has an aim down sight and sprint out time of 210 milliseconds. This is a relatively minor difference. We're talking about 1 frame difference here, but it sometimes can make the difference between life and death in Call of Duty. Our movement speed for both of these is 100%, which is standard for the SMG category. And our aim down sight stray speed is actually the same for both of these, but it's better than all of the other SMGs in the category. This is 76%. As for our magazine capacity, our total starting ammo, and our reload add times, all of these stats are completely identical between these two guns. Same thing goes with our Hipfire. They're both standard for the SMG category. They have the exact same Hipfire spread, and it's really strange because I always found with the Sterling, it's so great at Hipfire, and I really enjoy using it with Hipfire, but with the Grease Gun, I don't really feel the same way. I tried testing Hipfire spreads while I was moving, while I wasn't moving, while I was standing, crouched, and prone, and it's identical between the two all the time. And therefore, I can't really quantify why it feels like it's better to Hipfire with the Sterling. Maybe it's just the animations and the way that you hold the gun, it makes it look like it's better at Hipfire. I don't really know. In either case, the Hipfire stats on these guns are technically identical. So finally, the last thing we're going to be looking at, and another area where these differ, is going to be in recoil. As you can see right here, I put these side by side. The Grease Gun tends to have mainly vertical recoil with a little bit of side-to-side jumping within that, whereas the Sterling doesn't have nearly as much vertical recoil, but it does tend to jump side-to-side a bit more sporadically than the Grease Gun. As a result, even though the spread itself is larger for the Grease Gun, I personally find that the Grease Gun is a lot easier to control when it comes to recoil, and I'm much more comfortable challenging people at longer ranges with the Grease Gun compared to the Sterling, and this is just due to the fact that I feel it's a lot more controllable. You just have to pull down a little bit on the right analog stick, and then the Grease Gun will be more accurate than the Sterling could ever be. I even double-checked this with the hard-coded stats, and it turns out the Sterling does in fact have a wider range for its horizontal recoil than the Grease Gun does, and that backs up these wall tests that I did. So those are all the main stats to look at between these two guns. Most of these stats are literally identical. It's so clear that when they created the Sterling, they basically just copied and pasted the stats from the Grease Gun, and then they made a few tweaks here and there. I would say the simplest way to describe these guns is the Sterling is a Grease Gun with slightly better ranges, but that comes at the cost of recoil that's a bit harder to control. And personally, for me, if we're looking at which one is better and which one's worse, this is just my opinion, but I would take a gun that's slightly more accurate and has slightly lower range than a gun that has a little bit more range but is less accurate. I think of it this way, that little bit of added range that you get with the Sterling doesn't really help that much if you're going to be missing more shots, especially when you start stretching to those medium to somewhat longer ranges. This is why, for me, it's Grease Gun all the way. However, having said that, of course, I do have to mention, that's not me saying the Sterling is a terrible gun. I think the Sterling is still an excellent gun. I still enjoy using it sometimes. But if I had to put it head-to-head with the Grease Gun comes out on top for me. And with that, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what are your thoughts on these two guns? Which one do you think is better? Do you prefer the Grease Gun or the Sterling? Also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of the Versus series, I've covered quite a few different guns, as well as like the sticky grenade versus the frag grenade. I will leave a link to that playlist down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.